everybody, how you doing? And welcome to episode number 102 of the John Riley Project. It is January 7th, 2020, and I'm so pleased to have as my guest Fernando Garcia.
Yes.
How are you, Fernando?
I'm good. Thanks for having me.
All right. Well, Fernando, just a quick intro. You're a candidate for United States Congress from the 53rd District, a resident of Golden Hills, father, a green entrepreneur, an Aztec alum, Aztec for life.
That's right.
Criminal justice major. And, man, you're running for Congress.
Yes.
That's huge.
It's very exciting. And, it's kind of an honor to do it. So, as a citizen of this country, I want to take part in the process, and it's been an experience so far. So
right on,
happy to do it.
So thanks for joining us.
Oh, thanks for having me.
Because this podcast, I like to think of it as a community forum. We could talk about issues, the news of the day.
Sure.
But as a candidate for Congress, there's a million directions we can go.
Yes.
But let's learn more about you.
Sure.
So tell me a little more about your backstory. Where you grew up and what kind of led you up to this point.
Yeah. So I grew up in a suburb of LA County. I grew up in a city called Walnut, and so very middle class upbringing. My mom and dad, older brother, younger sister, and just kind of had the American dream kind of childhood. I love where I grew up. Went to good high school, good public school. Had the opportunity to go to San Diego State. So after college, went to San Diego State, graduated. Became with a criminal justice major, stayed out here in San Diego, got into financial services, moved back to LA, and then also Orange County area, lived there for about a good 12, 13 years, and then moved back down to San Diego about 2 years ago. So
good.
But
it's nice here.
Yes. So that's kind of in terms of where, so I'm a Southern California native through and through.
Sure.
This is the only place I've ever lived. So
right on.
But I spent about 15 years in financial services after I graduated college. And, I was a certified financial planner. I was a certified employee benefits specialist. I spent a lot of time dealing with group plans. So, like 401ks, 403bs. So, I have a big background in investments and group benefits. And, with that experience, people would always ask me, outside of the stock market, where should I invest my money? And I would always come with the response, anywhere where you can invest your money in yourself is usually going to give you the best rate of return.
That's true.
Yeah. And that can mean a lot of things. That could be owning a home, owning a business, more training, more education, something that makes you more valuable to the economy, those things. And one of the things I found was the opportunity to own your own energy source. So, and I started to look into solar, and that's how I got into the solar business. And I've been in the solar business for about 3 years now, and started my own company. And so, I enjoy being a green entrepreneur because not only do I get to help homeowners own their own energy source, I get to help them save money, and I also get to help make the environment better. So it's kind of win-win for everybody.
Right on. We've talked a lot about solar energy here on this podcast, and we have solar panels and 2 electric cars.
Yeah, I saw that. Yes.
And so I dig all that new technology.
Yes,
but it's an interesting background that you have, especially to go to Congress. A financial planner.
Right.
We could use that in Washington D.C.
Right.
And we're talking about a lot of the entitlement programs, and you have a background in financial planning, and all of the tax benefits of that. So you'll understand legislation related to that.
Right.
And then as an entrepreneur, a lot of other members of Congress sometimes get criticized because they've never done anything other than be a politician their whole life. So I think that's an intriguing background.
Yeah. The nice thing is I understand what it takes to go from, because of my experience and my background in financial services, I basically left a good paying job to start a company. And, at that time, my oldest is 20 right now. He's a junior at Berkeley. And so he was finishing up his senior year. And, one of the big questions was I have is, well, if this business doesn't go good, how am I going to pay for tuition? Right. So I had a lot of pressure on me. And like a lot of entrepreneurs, they're maybe at a good job, and there's always that fear of taking that next step. So they may have ideas that they think are good, but they don't want to fail, and because not just for themselves, but maybe for the people they care for. And so I understand those fears. I understand how we can address some of those things, how we can create legislation to hopefully help small business owners, to help people make that transition. And so I think that's the experience I have. So I want to be, because I think there's a lot of people on the sidelines that can really help our economy, help our society. And we want to say, hey, bring your ideas forward and, let's push this country. Let's make it better.
Right on. Yeah. I think that's a very valuable experience. I mean, not only just being an entrepreneur, but literally creating a company from the ground up. I mean, that's a unique insight.
Yes.
It's one thing for, Tom Steyer or somebody just to lay down a bunch of money and start something.
Right.
But to really start it like from ground zero. That's special.
Yeah. And, I'm a big advocate for the small business owner because, I think that big business is nice, but they tend to think of themselves. And, one of the reasons, we haven't got into it, but I'm an independent candidate mainly because I feel like the two parties are really kind of bought out by a lot of corporations. A lot of the same corporations just donate to the same parties, and whoever wins, they kind of got them in their pockets. So I want to be an advocate for the small business owner, that young person or older person or wherever stage they are in life that wants to take that leap. I want to create a tax system and a healthcare system that benefits them, not just the corporations.
So I just think it's awesome that you're running as an independent because you and I share that same sensibility because the Republicans and the Democrats are highly co-opted. They'll sometimes talk, give a little lip service to the notion of small business, but their focus is on big business.
Right. And it's crazy because, a lot of people, for example, will vote Republican because they want a balanced budget and they just end up getting more deficit, right?
Yes.
You vote Democrat because you want less war. You sometimes get more war.
Yes.
Right. So it's kind of like you're voting for these parties and get the exact opposite. And I think it's that way by design because as long as the multinational corporations and the very wealthy control both parties, we're never really going to get anywhere.
And I agree with you. I think it is by design because, in my opinion, the two main parties are far more similar than they are different. But the portrayal in the media is that they're night and day.
Right.
That they're polar opposites, and that is not true. So I think we need more new perspectives. And that's why I always think in the debates, like when they have the general debates for president, I always wish there were more than two podiums.
Right. Yes. And what I find is that when I talk to people one-on-one, we agree way more and we're willing to work with each other. We're willing to compromise more when we just talk one-on-one. There's really not a lot of hatred going on, but kind of when you maybe go on Facebook or other social media or look in the, turn on the TV, you see a lot more division. But in reality, people kind of want the same thing and, they kind of agree on a lot of the major issues. So I just think, and people are starting to see how the two-party system is dividing us and they're more willing to look outside of those parties. And if you look at the numbers, we have actually, in my district, we actually have more independent or what they refer to as non-party preference voters than we do Republican voters. And we're creeping up on the Democrats as well. So more and more people are leaving those parties and actually going no party preference or independent.
Well, I think my understanding is that nationwide, there are more no party preference than there are Republicans or Democrats.
Yes.
But in your district, maybe slightly more Democrats than independent.
Right, yes.
But that's great.
Yeah.
I mean, I think there should be a lot of voters that are going to give you a serious look.
Yeah, and that's what I'm hoping. There's actually 15 candidates in my district running, which is kind of unheard of. I mean, usually you might get, sometimes just one, 2, 3, it's 5. But, there's a lot of people running, a lot of independents running in other districts too. In my district, I'm the actually only independent out there. So there's 11 Democrats, 3 Republicans, and I'm the only independent. So
well, that's good because if there are 15 people, you have to differentiate yourself.
Yes.
But I think probably because this is Susan Davis's old seat, right?
That's correct, yeah.
So once a longtime incumbent decides to step down, everyone jumps in.
Yeah, the floodgates kind of opened up. Yeah.
So that's awesome.
Yeah.
So so that's what led you to this point. And really, you said the main reason you're running is really to advocate for that small business owner. Yeah,
that small business. There's a lot of reasons I think why I'm running. Definitely want to advocate for that small business owner. I think small business owner are at the heart of the American economy.
Yes.
And when you go back to the founding of our country, a lot of people were farmers, right? Which is kind of the equivalent of a small business owner. They were kind of controlling their own destiny to an extent, as we went into this industrial revolution, we became more wage earners, and we were kind of more dependent upon the corporations. And they kind of do hold that over us in terms of legislation, because they say, if you don't do this, you're going to lose your job. But as a small business owner, you're not so concerned. It gives you more freedom. You're more in control. So that's why I want to promote more and more people taking control of their economy, their personal economy, their local economy, and so they don't have to depend upon big corporations for their income.
Yeah, and that's the independent streak that you have.
Yes.
Because I think, it's important to control your own source of income to the greatest degree that you can. And in my opinion, I think if we encourage more of that across society, we wouldn't have as many people that were maybe have their sights set so low on a minimum wage job. They might say, hey, I'm better than that.
That's right.
I can perform and deliver a lot more value and earn way more.
Yep, absolutely.
If they had the right mindset.
Right.
But that mindset isn't the bully pulpit. The politicians don't really push it.
Right. And I think a big part of it is obviously our educational system. For most people that may not know it, it stems from from the factory workers. That's why we start school at 8 o'clock and we have recess, and it's very similar to the way it would work in a factory.
Right.
And so we're really not pumping out entrepreneurs or free thinkers. And so I do think there are some things that we need to do on the educational level, so that we are promoting people to be more independent and think for themselves. And also, there's a lot of things I think we need to do with education, but at the end of the day, I think part of the reason we're so adamant about looking for a job rather than creating our own business and other things is because of how the educational system has kind of developed us that way.
Well, let's go down this rabbit hole of education.
Sure.
So if you had a magic wand and could transform our education system in K through 12 or higher education, what are some of the top things you would consider doing?
Well, so, first of all, I do believe that education should be more controlled on the local level. I'm definitely somebody that believes that the more that we bring control home and closer, the more, you have a say in it. I think that's better for everybody. I don't think that local school districts or states should necessarily have to answer to the federal government. I think that's number one. Number two, I do think that in terms of trades, I do think we need to have more trade training in the high schools. I think that, especially young boys, we tend to, learn differently. We're not very much, well, not for everybody. We don't necessarily want to be in front of a chalkboard sitting down. We like to work with our hands. And so I think at a young age, we need to start providing those opportunities. More trade jobs and more trade training in the high school arena. I also, my feelings on higher education is, for example, I went to San Diego State 4 years, 2 years, the standard. Everybody takes their 2 years of lower division, 2 years higher division. To me, the 2 years of lower division is almost like repeating high school.
It is.
Right?
You're right.
And so for me, I could easily wipe away my first year of college, and it wouldn't lower my education level. But it would have saved me 25% of what I totally spent on college. So to me, one of the ways to lower the cost of college is let's make it a 3-year degree rather than a 4-year degree. And we should also allow for those students who are motivated in high school to take a lot of that 1 year of general ed during their high school career, whether it's online or at a junior college or however it may be, so that for those students who are motivated, they can finish college in 2 years. And if they want to get a master's, they could do it in 4, so it'd be a total of 4 years if they wanted to get a bachelor's and a master's.
Right.
And we'll get them working, a lot sooner. And so I think there's things that we can do to save money. We can cut the waste in a lot of areas. I think that's one way. But that's what I believe when it comes to education. In terms of higher education, we should cut the fat. In terms of high school, I think we need to offer more trade training. And then, when you're looking from like K to 8th grade, I think, we definitely need to have more control at the local level, the city and state and county level,
right,
and let them decide how they what works best for them. Because what works best in rural America may not work good in, the inner city or the suburbs. So let them decide. And, that would be my how I would approach it.
Well, what's your take? Like one of the topics that's buzzing around at least in the Democratic debates is this notion of canceling student debt. And what's your angle on that?
So I don't think we should cancel all student debt, and the reason why is that I've had a lot of people who decided who went to, for example, they went to the military. Mainly because they wanted to have college, paid for. They worked, a job while they, while they went to school, so they wouldn't have to take student loans. Or they worked extra hard after college to pay off those student loans. And so there's a part of me that feels like we would be in a disservice to them if we just wiped away everybody's loan. It almost says like, well, why did I make those sacrifices when I could have just ran up the debt?
Yeah.
And not done that. And so that's a big reason why I don't think we should just 100% eliminate it. Now, what I do think is I am for offering assistance. And what I mean by that is, hey, look, we have a lot of people that are sitting on a lot of student debt. So there's a lot of young people who aren't starting families, they're not starting businesses, they're not buying homes, which are things that stimulate the economy. So if we're so I do think we can help them. Some of the areas I think we could help them is one, we can eliminate the interest on that loan. So for example, if we say, hey, you owe $50,000, so we'll say, hey, look, no more interest on that loan, so it's going to stay $50,000, and every payment you make goes down to paying the principal. You're still going to pay it off, but we're not going to keep building that interest on top. So we can do something like that. We can also allow the option, and one of the things I think we should do is allow the option for them to BK on student loans. And here's why.
So bankruptcy.
Bankruptcy, yes. Yeah. So they should have the option of bankruptcy because I'll give you an example. I can go out and run $50,000 of credit card debt on going out to eat, whatever I want.
Right.
And I can declare bankruptcy on that and not pay it back. Now, there are consequences to declaring that. I'm going to have bad credit. I'm not going to be able to do certain things for a while.
Right.
But I can get out from under that debt and start over. And one of the things that bankruptcy does is it also prevents the lenders from over-lending. Right. It's kind of like a check to them.
Yes.
And you have so many lenders who are willing to just give students money because they know they can't BK. They're going to have them on the hook forever.
And they know they can't refinance it either.
That's right. And so the lenders, it's so much easier to get a student loan than, you can get a student loan for sometimes for, almost $100,000, very little, no income verification of any sort. Just kind of watch a video on YouTube or some type of, to show that you've learned the consequences, sign off on it, and they write you that check. But if you go and get a $100,000 loan for a home, they're going to verify your income. They're going to do this and that.
Yeah.
And so the lenders are just willing to give it to you. So I think we should be able to allow BK or bankruptcy for student loan debt.
Yeah, it kind of, we talked earlier about how the current this current state of affairs in D.C. is to favor the large corporations. In this case, maybe the large lenders, the large banks. Right. But the system becomes rigged for in their favor.
Right.
Because the loan is never escapable. It can't be refinanced, and they just got to sit back. And at some point, that person's going to pay.
Yeah. So that's and that to me is a simple solution. Right. I just think we need independence in there bring that forward.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
I think those are some good ideas.
Yeah.
But one thing we should have done, I neglected to ask you this in the very beginning.
Okay.
You're running for the 53rd Congressional District. And just for our listeners and viewers, describe that geography for us.
So that would basically be central San Diego. So it would start from, think of Old Town and Golden Hills, close to downtown. And then it would go east down the 8 pretty much. So it would include things like Balboa Park, North Park, South Park, Hillcrest, Fashion Valley, Mission Valley, College area. So it kind of goes down the 8 to La Mesa, half of El Cajon, and then it starts to go down south towards Bonita and the east part of Chula Vista. And so it's kind of, if you looked at it on a map, it kind of looks like Florida, the way I described it. So but it's a big district. It's kind of funny when you look at it, you go, oh, wow, that's some really crazy gerrymandering.
Yeah.
So it's like the first thing that pops out is the gerrymandering issues that we have. So
yeah, and I bet you like along the very edge, there's probably a couple little carve outs.
Yes.
That for certain neighborhoods.
Yeah.
So yeah,
it's interesting.
Yeah, we've talked a lot about gerrymandering in this podcast because at the local level, we saw a bit of it in our city here in Poway, but we really saw it in our school district.
Okay.
The way they carved it up, and so that's a big issue.
Yeah.
And I guess it's whoever has control of the House of Representatives every census, right? Gets to make the decisions.
Right.
So yeah, that's a tough go.
Yeah. So hopefully we can change, because we would long term those things lead to the division. And it prevents competition.
Yeah.
So that's
more rigged system.
That's more of a rigged system. So we should, as Americans, I always tell people that when you live in a democracy, you have to be more involved. When you live in a communist society or socialist society, I mean, your kind of decisions are made for you. In a democracy, we do have to be more involved. We have to listen to different side of views. So that may mean you have to listen to CNN and Fox, to kind of, because, everybody's going to put their little skew on things. And so you want to, in order to kind of get the truth, you're going to kind of have to see things from both ends. And I always tell people, rather than, if you're watching news, maybe you should read a book too.
Yes.
So, the reading is probably the least biased out there. So that's what I recommend.
Yeah, my angle on that is that every media is biased to some degree, whether consciously or unconsciously. There's conscious, obviously they tilt a story, but sometimes they'll only present, one side and the other side when there might be a third side or a fourth side that's not even part of the discussion.
Yeah.
And so I've always been an advocate of get your media from as many sources as possible and distill the truth yourself.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because like you say, you'll learn a little bit. If you look CNN, Fox, you'll kind of balance it out.
Yeah.
So, I was going through your website and you have an issues section and you talk about, I think it was the first one on there, I think is healthcare, isn't it?
Right.
So that's obviously a hot topic. Break it down for me. How do you see this going?
So I think we do need a public option. I don't know if it necessarily needs to be a Medicare for all and not allow private sector insurance. I do still believe that we should have a private sector out there offering insurance, and if people choose to go that route, they should have the freedom to do that. But I do think a public option is good. And I do think it's good for small business owners, because one of the reasons people don't take that leap from leaving their employer to go and becoming self-employed is the healthcare issue, right? So I do think that offering a public option that's affordable will be a boom for small business, and so that's why I'm a big believer in that. I think we can, right now, people don't realize that healthcare is already over a third of it is actually already paid for by the government through Medicaid or Medicare type programs.
Or VA.
Those types of things. But I do think we need a public option, whether, if those premiums need to be affordable, we can do that. There's a lot of different options we can look at. It's just, I do think we can still have a public option, but we can still have private insurance, and, we can still allow for businesses to help their employees who maybe, I'll give you an example. I for many years worked with benefits, so health insurance, voluntary benefits, those things. And so if you have a workforce that you say, hey, I'm not going to provide health insurance for, they're going to be on the public option, then maybe you can provide like a flexible spending account or health savings account where you're going to put away money for them that they can then use for co-pays and things like that. So, and it's a pre-tax deduction. You can also allow the employer or the employee to contribute to it on a pre-tax basis, so that everybody's kind of involved. Because I don't believe in 100% free healthcare anywhere, and I'll tell you why. I think that a lot of our illnesses. Well, one, our healthcare is expensive because we're sick. Not necessarily, right? That's the one issue that a lot of people don't talk about. It's one of the biggest issues, that we're a sick country. Well, why are we sick? Well, a lot of it has to do with our food. People are overweight, bad lifestyle choices, and a lot of it's preventative. Yeah, right. So especially with heart disease. So. And even providing them health care, if they're not taking care of themselves, they're going to continue to if they're not going to eat better, basically, if they're not going to stop smoking and drinking, I feel like those people who are going to continuously go to the doctor, they should still pay those co-pays. They should still pay for those prescriptions. That way they're, in essence, kind of penalized, or they're contributing to their lifestyle that's costing them more healthcare costs.
Reasonable.
Right. And then that way, those people who do decide to be healthier don't go to the doctor, don't have to go to the doctor. They're not having to pay those copays and buy those prescriptions. So there's an incentive to stay healthy, basically.
Right.
And so I think that copays and things like that should be there to encourage that.
Yeah, it's an interesting idea, because you brought up a really good point, is that a lot of people stay in their job because they are clinging to that insurance. And maybe they have a pre-existing condition that they can't detach from. Right. Or maybe, if you get a new job, you might go 90 days without insurance. Right. And then you might have kids at home and different things. So disconnecting insurance from employers makes a lot of sense to me.
Yeah.
Now, I'm not a big fan of Medicare for All myself, but I always thought that if you had to transition in some way, not single payer, public option, made a little more sense.
Right. Yeah.
Because then we can have choice.
Right.
And there's a lot of people, I think, that some union workers that have really, really good healthcare plans. Right. And it's quite possible that a Medicare for All might be a step down for them.
Right. Yep. Yeah.
So it's interesting.
And one of the things too, I also feel that Congress, I really feel people in Congress should actually be on the VA system. Because I think that should be either the VA or whatever the public option is. That way they are experiencing what the American public is. Yeah. I'm also a big believer in, hey, if we put all Congress men and women on the VA system, I'm all for that. I think because we should have to deal with what they're dealing with.
Yeah. Well, they have to be able to walk in the shoes of the constituents they serve.
That's right.
And that's the other beauty we were talking about earlier. You, as a small business owner, you kind of get what people in your district really do.
Right. Yes.
So, that makes sense. Yeah. They should be on that plan.
Right.
Let's. There's a ton more issues, but I want to jump back to something different.
Okay.
There are 15 people running for office in your district, and give me a sense of how you see the race, how you're special or different, or besides being independent, what are the things that differentiate you from the others?
Well, I am a believer in the green economy. My problem is with the what they call the Green Plan is...
Or the Green New Deal?
The Green New Deal, I'm sorry, the Green New Deal. The problem is I'm 100% on board with the green economy, but with the Green New Deal, they also throw in some other stuff there that I don't 100% agree with all the way. But I am for the green economy, and that would include things like solar, wind, but also we need to upgrade our infrastructure. We need to make our buildings and homes more energy efficient, because efficiency is also a big thing that we can do. And those are all going to be accomplished by American workers, particularly tradespeople,
right.
And a lot of union people too. And so my thing is, because I come from that background, I understand what motivates people to go renewable. So the example I always give is, hey, look, I sell solar to Republicans. I sell solar to Trump supporters, right?
Yeah, right on.
They will go solar, you know, but even if they don't necessarily 100% believe in climate change or anything, that's fine. But what they do believe in is they believe in owning their own energy source.
Yes.
They hate their power company.
Yes.
Right. So let's speak the language that they understand.
Right.
So we should also. So I think from I do believe in climate change, but sometimes we need to change the narrative.
Yes.
So that we can get more people to get on the board of renewables, which is going to achieve our goal of being a cleaner environment. So,
right.
So I think we need to bring more Republicans on board, but we need to change the story. And I think because I have that experience of in essence, selling solar to different types of people, I can explain that narrative, and nobody's really talking about that. And I left my job and left my industry, my old industry before, because I wanted to make a difference in the environment and in the renewable industry. That's why I did it. None of my other candidates did that, you know. So
they'll talk the talk.
That's right. That's right. And regardless if I win or lose or not, I'm still in. I'm still in.
Yeah.
So. So that's the main difference.
Well, there's just a lot of financial upside, you know, to owning your own power source.
Absolutely.
You know, and you know, heck, we don't use a drop of gas. I mean, we have 2 EVs, 100% charged by solar. I mean, it's a beautiful little system.
Right. Because and the thing is, when I talk to people who understand that, it's like, hey, look, you can be your own power company. And I'm gonna take a step back. A lot of people love the idea of owning their home because they don't have a landlord basically telling them what to do. That's kind of the American dream, right?
Yeah.
That's great. But guess what? Now you can own your own energy source. You can be your own power company.
Yes.
You can be your own gas company.
Yes.
And you're not beholden to what they decide gas is today. Right? Is it going to be $4? Is it going to be $3?
Yep.
Guess what? You've already set the price for yourself.
Exactly.
So, and I think the more that we can be in control of those things as citizens, the less we need government, which should be the point. I mean, the point of government should be to make you more efficient, more reliant, basically. And so, that's the story of renewables. The more we have renewables, like I said, it's American jobs. The tax credit is going to be expiring at the end of 2021. I do think we need to save that. I think that's a big driving force. I love utilizing tax credits because it's basically just giving the taxpayer back their money. Right. So it's really it's almost not really costing you the country anything. Right. So I think we can utilize tax credits a lot for solar, for people making their buildings and homes more energy efficient, electric cars, all those things. So. Do
you ever get the sense, though, that the climate change conversation is not about these practical, concrete things that we're talking about? It's more, do you believe in climate change or not? Right. Are you anti-science? Are you pro-science? Right. And then people want to beat each other up at that level. Right. Where rather than saying, all right, the science is what the science is, and the scientists will do that. Yeah. But we know for real that, ice is melting, but more importantly, we know that we can control our own power.
That's right.
And we can, not have to, go to the gas station and wait in line and pay $4 or $5 a gallon.
That's right. Because that is something I think everybody will get behind.
Yeah.
And that's why I think the narrative has to change a little bit. I mean, if you believe in the science, great. I do. If some people don't, I mean, that's your personal choice. I mean, some people may disagree with my religious, views, and I may disagree with them, but that doesn't mean that we can't agree on other things.
Right.
So
you have a couple of interesting competitors in your race. I know the daughter of the Qualcomm founder, Erwin Jacobs, is running in your race.
Right.
I mean, what's she like? I'm sure you've met her.
I haven't met her yet. I'm going to meet her, but I haven't actually met her yet. I've seen I would say this about pretty much all of my candidates is that I'm pretty sure they're nice people.
Yeah.
And I'm pretty sure they want to try to do the right thing. But her background has given her opportunities that maybe, right?
For sure.
The normal person didn't get.
Well, she worked on Obama's staff, right?
Pretty much right out of college.
Yeah.
Right. You know, so she didn't really cut her teeth the way that, you know, me or you or other people might have done it. And so we understand it, and we have a vested interest in these things. You know, if we fail, then there's maybe not a lot of places we can go, but, you know, if she fails, you know, she can go back home. You know, there's money waiting for her to do whatever she wants to do.
That's right.
Right. And so, but like I said, she's probably a nice person, but I think she's might be a little bit of out of touch.
Yeah.
I think that as far as what I see on the Democrat side, they're all kind of the same. It's basically 11 people kind of preaching the same thing, you know, and which is, to me, there are no new ideas. Let's just throw money at the problem.
Right.
And I'm a believer of let's throw ideas at the problem rather than money.
Nice.
And let's look at our freedoms. You know, where are we? I'll give you an example. I'm a big believer in the production of hemp. So, you know, one of the nice things that, you know, I'm not a Trump supporter, but one of the nice things he did is he did legalize the commercialization of hemp production back in 2018 with the Farm Bill. Yeah. And so I like that. You know, I think that's good. And I would even go a step further to say, hey, let's use tax credits to help farmers grow more hemp, which is a great carbon capture. It captures more carbon 4 times the rate than regular trees. Right. So, and it's a great use for plastics, hempcrete, all kinds of building materials that we can use. And so we really need to develop the hemp industry the way we kind of help the solar industry. And I think it's a win-win for farmers. Hemp can grow in just about any condition, very little water, almost no pesticides. And so I think it's a win-win. And I think we just need to, those are things that we need to look at. Hey, how can we be more free to do those types of things? Yeah. And so, so I'm a big believer in that.
That makes so much sense because, I mean, hemp is really big in developing textiles too, right? Yep. And like rope and clothing and other things. But it seems like it's had this voodoo over it because of its connection to marijuana. Right. But in reality, it's a great product that we can develop here in America. Sure. Yep. And but you sometimes wonder, you know, are the corporate powers the ones that are influencing it to make it illegal?
Yeah, I do. I would say yes. I mean, most of our plastics are oil-based plastics, so there's an incentive for the fossil fuel industry to not allow that. You know, there's hemp is actually in many cases. It's actually stronger than steel. So, you know, for me, it's just you have these companies that don't want change, these industries that don't want change, but it's a product that's good for everybody. Yeah. You know, so I hope to see it. And you know, I think we have a criminal justice system with private prisons that it's incentivized for us to arrest more people and put more people in jail. And so I think by allowing us to grow hemp, it's going to be good for the American farmer. It's going to be good for the environment, for the consumer. It's just a win-win. So nice.
Well, you know, you just said criminal justice. Yeah, that's a good area for us to maybe go down because that's a hot topic. It was one where it seemed like the Republicans and Democrats might actually agree on something, right? You know, or at least publicly agree. Yeah. So, what's your take on where the system is now, and what are the changes you'd like to see?
Well, I think the biggest thing is the drug war. Yeah. I think that when people are angry at the criminal justice system, it's really what the drug war has done. You know, longer sentences, over policing, filling up our. Most of the prisoners are there for drug-related offenses, right? So that's what's really ballooned the cost and the incarceration rate. So I'm somebody that very much believes in our freedoms. So I do believe that we should end the drug war, and we should start very similar to what we did with cannabis. Is we should start legalizing things, regulating it, and but it needs to be a process. You know, I'll give you an example. Here in California, we didn't just make it recreational. right? We kind of said, okay, we're going to make it medical. We're going to make it medical available, right? Which is the smart idea. I also think we need to do that with things like psychedelics. I think that we should make it medically available for those people who are suffering from mental illness or whatever, any kind of illness, and if we feel it can help them. Things like psilocybin and MDMA and things like that, but. And then once people realize, hey, look, we've legalized marijuana on a medical basis. The world hasn't ended yet. We're still normal.
Yeah,
right?
Yeah, right.
We put it on a recreational basis. We're taxing it and everything. World hasn't ended yet.
Yeah,
right.
Yeah,
So okay, now let's maybe look at some other things. Let's look at psychedelics. I think that we do have a mental health issue. And not saying that psychedelics are the key to figuring everything out, but I think it's a tool that people can use. And if somebody's suffering from mental illness, they should have all the tools available to them. And so I think we should really look into legalizing psychedelics for that reason, especially when you have a homeless problem as big as we do. And we all know that a lot of it has to do with mental illness. So I think we need to. That's one of the areas where we need to look at our freedoms and our liberties and say, hey, where are we not using our freedoms and liberties to solve these problems? So,
yeah, it's a really, from my perspective, that's a refreshing approach. Yeah. Because for so long, it's like I said, the voodoo, and people spooked by all the drugs, but it seems that the fact that they are illegal creates far more problems than the misuse of the drug itself.
That's right. And I always have to kind of come from a conservative family. So when I say these things, they're kind of, oh, so you want to do this? You want to do heroin? And I'm like, no, I'm still anti-drugs in the sense that I don't think it's healthy for you. I don't think my kids should be out there doing meth.
Right.
So I'm still on that. But at the same time, I don't think it should be so criminalized, right? I think we need to, the fact that, like you said, the fact that it's against the law is what's really causing the problems. And is it still going to be a problem? Does drug use cause some social issues? Of course, but it's how we want to approach it. What's the best way to do it? And I don't think the current way of locking people up is the best way.
I've often thought that, when we talk about, guns and gun violence, I thought one quick way to reduce gun violence quickly is to legalize drugs because of all of the gang warfare, the cartels that are moving the drugs. There's a lot of gun violence associated with that.
Yeah, that's true. Yes. That would, because nobody's really killing each other that's a U.S. citizen for marijuana anymore. Right. Not like there's nobody saying this is my marijuana turf. Yeah. It's because it's all in dispensaries now. You know? And you see a lot of, and especially when you realize a lot of deaths actually occur from alcohol, which is illegal.
Yeah.
So
inconsistencies.
That's right.
Hypocrisy, perhaps. Right.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And since we're on the gun, we kind of went to the gun issue a little bit. I'm not a gun nut. I always tell people I'm not. I own guns, but and I shoot them, maybe once a year. But I have a lot of buddies who are gun. They love to go shooting. If you say let's go shooting, they're going to raise their hand and they'll spend all day. But I do believe in our right to protect ourselves and our property and our loved ones, and we do have. We do have a gun violence problem here. It's not caused by law-abiding citizens, law-abiding gun owners. So one of the things I do feel about in terms of gun control is I'm a big believer because we do have a problem with straw buying of guns.
What does that mean?
So straw buying is basically, like I don't have a criminal record, right? So I can go and pretty much buy as many guns as I want, especially I can go to another state many times, buy as many guns as I want. And what I'll do is I'll take these guns and I'll sell them on the black market for a profit. So that's why, for example, in Chicago, they have very strict gun laws, but a lot of them will go to Indiana, buy those guns, and then so somebody like myself would go buy those guns in Indiana where they're very lax, buy a bunch of them, and then sell them on the black market for a profit.
Right.
And they also do that a lot, selling them down in Mexico. So I'll buy a lot of guns here, and then I'll just ship them down to Mexico for a profit because they don't allow guns down there. So what I would recommend is for everybody to, and some of my gun friends, they don't agree with what I'm saying here, but I think the best way is everybody has to register their guns.
Right.
And I think that to prevent straw buying is every 5 years or whatever the year could be, is you have to go in and take them to a local police department, and they have to verify you're still in possession of those firearms. And so what that's going to do is it's going to prevent you from it's going to prevent people from buying them and selling them, because if you cannot show that you have those guns, then they're going to say, well, where are those guns at? And so I'm a big believer in registering firearms, and I'm a believer in people having to re-register them so often.
Right.
So, I'll get in arguments where, well, why should I have to do that? And I go, I understand, you don't want to be inconvenienced, but I think that to prevent the straw buying, which is causing a lot of gun violence in the inner city and in other countries down south, then I think we need to do something about it. And I'm not infringing. I don't care if you have an AR-15. If you want to have 3 AR-15s, go ahead.
Right.
But you're just going to have to come in and just show that you have them.
Right.
So,
the gun topic, I've never really been firmly in any camp, because I understand the rationale of both sides.
Right.
And there's that place in the middle. There's a little more nuance, I think, is what you're presenting.
Right.
And there's all, it's reasonable, what people are talking about. Of course, there's people on the extremes of either side.
Right.
Where some people want to have the police knocking down every door and collecting guns.
Right.
And there's other people that, they want to stockpile for the next revolution.
Right.
So, but I've always thought that if we're ever going to really conquer this problem one way or the other, the Constitution needs to be amended. To make it clear.
Right.
Because right now it's kind of a little bit ambiguous, mostly clear, a little ambiguous, and then it creates the debate.
Yes. Yeah. And well, the nice thing about the Constitution is that it allowed us, they understood they didn't see all the problems down the road, so they allowed us to amend it. So, and I don't think I'm assuming they didn't anticipate that we were going to have these, firearms that could shoot the way they could. And, so yeah, but yes, I do think we need to. I think that the country's so divided at some point that sometimes that it's hard for us to find common ground. And I think, and at the end of the day, we're going to have to accept some compromise where not everybody's going to agree. Hey, we're not going to take everybody's guns away, which some people are going to be, they're going to be mad at.
Yeah.
And then there's going to be people who say, oh, I got to register my guns every so often. I don't want to do that because they're going to know I have all these guns.
Right.
Well, hey, but we're not going to take those guns away. You just have to, follow these rules.
Interesting.
So, yeah.
Well, I'd imagine that some of your competitors, maybe mostly Democrats, are probably very hardcore on gun control laws.
Yeah. And some of them are. Actually, a lot of them aren't. I'm making that assumption, but a lot of them don't really go into the issue. I'm really the only one that I've seen that really does say, hey, this is what I want to do differently, which is the gun registration and the constant re-registration of them. I do think that part of it is we do have a lot of military.
Yeah.
And they do tend to be a little bit more pro guns, and I think they just don't want to, make anybody mad, basically.
So they're calculating.
That's right.
Right? Because they don't want to put the issue on the table because then they have to take a position and then they alienate.
Right.
But a little bit of a presidential angle to this. One candidate that I like a good deal of his platform is Andrew Yang.
Okay, yeah.
Because he puts all these things on his platform. If you go to his website, it's ridiculous.
There's like 100 different ideas. Yeah.
He takes positions on, NCAA Division I athletes being paid and on World Wrestling, he's got a thing. Which is kind of fun.
Right.
But he's not afraid to put an issue on the table and take a stand.
Yeah.
Where a lot of the other politicians they're a little bit calculating.
Right. I actually like Andrew. I like a lot of Andrew Yang's ideas. I think he's probably the smartest one up for the Democrats.
Yeah.
But I find that both parties, whenever they have somebody smart and intelligent, they don't give them a lot of time.
No.
On either party, it's like, hey, you're the smart guy. We don't want you to say all your ideas. You know what I mean? We want to go with really what they're kind of looking at. In my opinion, I think that they like to find the yes men or the yes women, somebody who's going to look to their party and say, hey, what do I do with this issue? And the party says, you're going to do this. This is where we stand. And then they go and they perform that,
Yes.
So, and I don't think Andrew's really not like that. So I do. So I like that part about him.
What do you think of his universal basic income?
So when I first heard it, like universal basic income, this was even before Andrew Allen's like, no way, that's crazy. I don't believe in that. But then once you start to look at where automation's taking us, with our jobs getting shipped away and Amazon and all those things that he talks about, he really makes a strong case for it.
He does.
I don't necessarily think we're there yet. And here's, also, Milton Friedman talked about it in the sense of having a negative income tax.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of economists that have kind of got on board with it. I don't think we're there yet. I think we can do a lot by pushing this green economy, which is going to drive jobs, local jobs.
Right.
But I think he's really brought the conversation because it may come to that, and the more that we have a logical conversation about it, the more it starts to make sense. I'm not 100% against it. I just don't think we need that right now. Maybe down the road, potentially. I think there's other avenues. The one thing that I would where I think he would win with the argument is, when he talks about the numbers. So he basically says, hey, look, it's going to cost us about, I think it was $3 trillion roughly to give everybody $1,000 a month.
Right.
And then he's like, well, his main argument is we spend about $1.5 trillion on social services approximately. Right. So I would say, if I was Andrew, I would say, hey, look, you're probably going to win that argument by rather than giving $100 or $1,000 a month, let's just give everybody $500 and just say, hey, we're going to eliminate welfare or social services for most people, and we're just going to, and that's where the money's going to come from.
Right.
And then everybody gets about $500, and you can use that to help spur the economy. And if you live in a two-family household, then now it's $1,000 a month. And the one thing I do like about it, with the universal basic income as opposed to welfare, I feel like our welfare system kind of promotes the breaking up of the family as opposed to bringing the family together. It's like, okay, if you're a single mom and you bring your husband into it, or the father of the child, then we're going to ding you for that. If you get married, then and all of a sudden but maybe you still need some financial help, then we're not going to allow you to be on this welfare program. So I think with universal basic income, it's like kind of gives from a financial perspective the benefit of having two incomes in the home, having two people in the home. They can share the expenses.
Right.
So that I think Andrew would probably win on something more like that. So that's how probably I would approach it.
It's interesting too, because I'm not a fan of it. I understand the logic behind it, but Andrew, you brought in Milton Friedman. I'm a big Milton Friedman fan, and but it seemed like when he proposed it, it was more of an academic exercise because that was in the late '60s, and UBI was kind of a thing people were talking about, and he said, well, how can we create a system, and what's his model? But unlike Yang, Friedman said just abolish all welfare. Right. And go with this. Where Yang kind of has, like, you can get the welfare or the UBI, whichever is more. Right. Okay. Yeah. But I've always believed that if you give everyone $1,000 a month, then they're going to want $1,500 a month.
That's my big fear too. So you're right, because all it is a politician's going to come in and say, you should be fighting for 1,000, not 500 or whatever. That is my biggest. That's my. And
then the politicians will give it away. Right. And then then it gets a little out of control. Yes. But I do appreciate that he's innovative. Yes. And he's trying to break out of the same talking points of all the other candidates. Yeah. Wow. Yeah. You having fun? Yes. This is good? Yeah. I love these kind of conversations. Yeah. It's funny because there's certain people that you come and I can talk politics and ideas all day long, and I enjoy having these conversations because it's not necessarily like I want to put my views on you or anybody. I enjoy being an independent because I can just listen to what you say, and if you have a better idea than me, I'm great with using your idea. It doesn't have to be my idea per se. And so I just enjoy these conversations and hear different views. It's fun, isn't it? Yeah, it is. Because this is part of the reason I created the podcast because I enjoy the conversation too. And especially if we're respectful of each other's opinions when we disagree, we learn from each other. Yeah. But this is the kind of stuff that's interesting to talk about. And I think there's a big audience for this kind of stuff. I think people are tired of just the real quick bumper sticker,
slogan. And, they really kind of know, well, what's the real issue? What's behind it, and having conversations like this, I think, promote that. I think people are craving it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now, let's just switch gears again.
Sure.
I'll come back to some of these hot topics, but what do you do for fun?
So I do a lot of different things. I actually play on a men's rugby team.
Wow.
So I play on the old Aztecs rugby team down here in San Diego. I've been doing that so I've been playing rugby for, this would be my 6th season.
Right on, so tough guy.
Yeah, so I enjoy, I grew up playing football my whole life, and then, finished in high school. And an interesting story was on my way. I got my girlfriend pregnant when I was in my sophomore year of college, and so I had my son when I was between the summer of my sophomore and junior year, and it was literally on my way to rugby practice. I was going to start playing at San Diego State. I'd gone to a few practices, and I was going to practice, and that's when my girlfriend at the time, my older son's mom, was like, "Hey, I'm pregnant," and that was the end of my rugby career.
Yeah.
And and then I was able to get back to it, 15 years later. Once my son started going to high school, and I had more time to do other stuff, and got back into it. And so, but I play rugby. I like to go fishing, camping, hanging out with my fiance. I have 2 boys. Spending time with my 2 boys, and
how old are they?
So my oldest is 20, and then my youngest is 11.
Okay.
So so that's family stuff. Just typical person.
So are you enjoying? You were talking about Aztecs, right?
Yes. Yeah.
The basketball team is doing really well.
Yes. So they have an amazing program. It's kind of funny. I actually saw Kawhi Leonard. We were at a restaurant in Little Italy, and he came in. He ate dinner there. But I'm a huge fan. We have great players. The students love the basketball team.
Yeah.
And football teams did good. It's been doing good. And, we're in an area where we can get a lot of good athletes,
right,
who wouldn't want to go to college in San Diego.
Yeah.
But I'm proud to be an Aztec. I always tell people I'm Aztec by blood and education. So
nice. So I'm a little different. I went to UCSD.
Oh, okay.
But the Aztecs have always been my adopted sports program.
Okay, yes.
But now the UCSD is going D1.
Oh, okay.
So now I'm going to have dual allegiances.
Yes.
But the Aztec program is great. And we had a podcast guest here yesterday, David Leland. We were talking about it. But Rocky Long might be leaving. So.
Oh, really? Okay. He was actually there when I was there. I think back in 97, 98, I think he was I want to say he was the linebacker coach back then, but I didn't play there, but I do remember the coaching staff there. And but he's been around forever.
Yeah. He's a special guy.
He's a great coach. Yeah.
All right, let's get back into the politics because this is good. Okay. Right. God, we covered a lot of stuff here. Immigration is a hot topic here in Southern California. Yeah. What's your angle on that?
So, my first of all, I kind of look at it from a lot of different angles. I think to me, a lot of the immigrants that are coming are no different than the pilgrims who came here, over 200 years ago. And, so I understand where they're coming from. My fiance, who's a social worker for the county, came here originally undocumented. She's a citizen now, but her story was that way. She was 13 years undocumented. So and they never took welfare. I mean, one of the biggest things about misconception is you can't get welfare if you're here illegally. So they didn't take any of those social services. They worked hard. They contribute to society. And I'm a big believer that overwhelming majority of people who come to this country are that way. Now, there are some bad elements that do cross over this border, and we don't, for our safety and for everybody's safety, we don't want that. And, so I do believe in borders. I do believe that, one of the things that I was talking to a Border Patrol agent the other day. He's like, one of the biggest problems I have is with the Ninth Circuit. And it's because they don't allow us to enforce some of our laws. For example, I'm a big believer, if you came to this country illegally and you're breaking our laws, you need to be gone.
Right.
Right. If you're out here getting it, if you already know you shouldn't be here, you have a DUI or you're causing violence or you're bringing drugs over. And one of the biggest problems they have is they're not even arresting them sometimes because they know they're not going to prosecute them. And so we need to have a Ninth Circuit Court judges that are going to enforce those type of laws, that if they do come in our country and they do break our laws, that they're going to get deported.
Right.
You know, so I'm big on that part. But if you are here illegally or undocumented, and you are here working and you're contributing and you're not breaking any of your laws, then my thing is, hey, look, let's find a path for them to stay here. I'm not somebody that thinks we need to break up families. Let's make them permanent residents. Let's give them status, fingerprint them, make sure that everything's good, and let them contribute to our society. You know, I'm not a big believer. You know, I don't think we need to demonize them. I don't think we need to deport them. I think we need to work with the situation we have. They are valid. You know, I know quite a few people who started out here undocumented and are contributing highly to our society. So,
yeah.
So I think we need to find a compromise, you know, and I think we need to work better with Mexico. You know, I think one of the things I didn't like what Trump was doing was this rhetoric of we're going to build a wall and we're going to make you pay for it, right? I mean, you're not going to, you know, if you move into a home and you tell your next door neighbor, hey, I'm going to build this wall and you're going to pay for it, you're not going to have the best relationship, right?
That's right.
And I think there's so many opportunities that we can capitalize on with Mexico that would benefit us and them. I'll give you an example. I think we can negotiate an opportunity with Mexico so that American citizens can own property in Mexico, can start small business over there, saying, "Hey, look, and here's why." An American citizen, for example, could say, "Hey, I have, I don't know, 80 grand or 100 grand, and I want to go and maybe do something where I can do a lot more with this money, right? Which would be good for Mexico, maybe good for that middle class person here in this country."
Yeah.
But one of the problems is you can't own property there. You can lease it, but you can't own it. You can't own the land. And so I think if we said, hey, look, we're dealing with issues that are happening on your side, happening in your country. They're overflowing to us. I think we throw us a bone so that our citizens can, help your economy, help themselves. Let's work together so that it benefits everybody. You know, I think that there's so many different ways we can work with Mexico to help our citizens too. You know,
actually, I never heard that approach, but that makes a lot of sense because if we can help Americans buy property in Mexico, then we can maybe also, as a trade, as a compromise, maybe make it easier for the undocumented to become documented. But by allowing Americans to invest, let's say in Baja, which is like a wonderful opportunity, it could build the economy, raise the standard of living for people that live in Mexico so that people aren't having to come here in the first place.
That's right. Right. So there's and here's the thing. It's like we have a NAFTA for big corporations, but we don't have like a NAFTA for just guys like us who just maybe want to do something small over there.
Yeah.
Right. And so, I can understand if Mexico said, hey, well, we don't want all these millionaires and billionaires coming buying all this land. Well, that's fine. Maybe you cap it at a 200,000. So a normal U.S. citizen can go over there and it benefits just the average American citizen, not multinationals. Right. So, I mean, to me, these are things that, I think we need to look at how do we help the people first, and as opposed to just how do we help the corporations first and hope the corporations, help everybody else. So.
Well, what's your take? Like, you already kind of talked a little bit about the wall, not having Mexico pay for it. But do you think we need a wall or a fence?
I think we need, in certain areas, we probably do need some type of, if the Border Patrol says, hey, we could use some wall or some fencing in this area, then I think we should do it. But I think to just flat out say we're going to have this kind of Berlin Wall or Great White Wall, Great Wall of China type of wall. I think it's foolish, and, it's not going to stop drugs, because those come from tunnels primarily.
Yeah.
It's not going to stop terrorists, because if anything, they'll come from Canada or through other legal ports of entry. And it will. When I talked to some Border Patrol agents, they said, "Well, we'll stop." The only thing it will stop is like elderly and children, because they're not going to be able to hop that wall quick enough or do certain things. So, I just don't think it's going to achieve what we think it's going to achieve. But in areas where we need more fencing or walling, I'm fine with that.
Yeah. Well, it also won't stop airplanes.
That's right.
And so you got people with expiring visas.
That's right.
Which is a huge portion of it, right?
Right.
Have you ever been down to Friendship Park? Like down in the southwest corner, San Ysidro, where the fence is that goes out into the ocean?
Oh, yeah. I haven't been there. No, but I've seen it. I know what you're talking about.
I drove down there maybe, I don't know, must have been about a little over a year ago. That was a really cool place.
Really? Yeah.
Because on the American side, it's very desolate. There's a little city park there, and the beach is untouched. It's beautiful.
Yeah.
And then there's it's a fence, with those gaps.
Right.
And then on the other side is the bullfighting ring.
Okay.
And then there was a community park there. They were having a festival when I went there.
Yeah.
And the beach is filled with people.
Wow. Yeah.
And the fence is right there that we always see on TV.
Right.
And it was just, it made you think, about all the issues that are being discussed and a lot of the misperceptions of what the border really is.
Right. It kind of humanizes it.
Yes. And then they'll have weddings and people on either side and they pass notes and nice.
Yeah.
So there's some cool things that happen there too.
Yeah.
But it does humanize it.
Yeah. And I think that's how we have to look at it too. Is, hey, look, the way I view it is, before I'm an American, I'm a human being. And so if I'm gonna and they're just as much, people across not just Mexico but other parts of the world, they're just as much God's children as I am. And so, we have to look at it from that perspective as well. And so, we also have to look at things. What would I do, if I was in a certain situation, and start from there. Right. And if we can start from there, then maybe we can kind of come to a consensus on other things.
Right on.
Yeah.
Let's talk a little bit about what's in the news right now.
Sure.
Okay, so the big thing right now is Iran, and the general that was killed, was it Soleimani?
Yeah.
Soleimani, right?
Yeah.
I always, when I first heard the name, I was thinking, remember Octomom?
Right.
She was Suleiman.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. And this is Soleimani.
Well, I'm surprised nobody has come up with a meme with that name and Soleimani. Yeah.
So anyways, what's your perspective on this whole situation?
So it's so here I'm going to talk about the short term. So I've talked to a few people in the intelligence in the intelligence arena, and they saw the report, and there was an imminent threat. So
there was an imminent threat. They're not telling us what it is.
They're not telling us what it is.
There was an
imminent threat.
Okay.
And the reason they're not telling it, they're going to come out and say what it is. But the reason they're not saying what it is because it puts certain people's lives in danger. So if they were to say, hey, this is what it is, the Iranians would know or have a good chance of knowing who gave us that information and potentially go after those people. So, so the reason the president isn't saying it right now, or why anybody's not disclosing it, is to keep those people safe.
Right.
And then later on they will disclose that. But so there was an imminent threat, and these are people that the thing about the intelligence community is they range from they're Republicans, they're Democrats, they're all over the place, and so they don't have a necessary ideology, but they're good people. They care about this country. And now, was the assassination of Soleimani the right way to stop it? That's where you can have the debate.
Right.
But there definitely was an imminent threat. And really what my worry is, because I do believe the Iranians are going to respond. Trump's already said, if you respond, we're going to respond. Right. Yeah. And then that's just going to have them respond.
Yeah.
So, I at the end of the day, I don't 100% know exactly what that imminent threat was, if we had to 100% take him out, or because if there's other options that we could have said, hey, we know about this and we can stop it other ways, we should have gone that route. Because this only boldens, they're hardliners. We know they're gonna do something. And what I think, I always put myself in their situation. What would I do if I was them, right? If I was Iran, how would I respond? So they can't really go heads up with us per se, right? They don't have the firepower to do that, but they're most likely going to use their proxies. They're probably right now working with some of our countries that we don't get along with, seeing where they're at with they're probably communicating with North Korea, Russia, China, and saying, hey, you know what happened. Let's see what, we're going to respond if we can maybe work with you. And so an example would be like potentially North Korea might do some kind of cyber attack, and in conjunction with Iran doing something,
Right.
Or one of their proxies doing something. And so I do think they're going to hit us. It's probably not going to be anytime soon. I think they're going to be patient. I think that the Iranians understand that they're not necessarily at war with America. They're really more at war with the Trump administration.
Right.
And they understand that his election's coming up. And so they're going to say, hey, how can we make it so that he doesn't get elected? Or to make it difficult for him to get reelected. Mm-hmm. And so I think they'll probably, if I had to guess, they'd probably do something maybe around summer, right, or kind of closer towards the election. That would be my guess. And like I said, I think they're probably going to try to work as much as they can. It won't be Iranian directly. It's going to be through one of their proxies and possibly with some of the other countries that are having some issues with us as well. That's how I see it playing out, but I could be wrong. Now, but I'm going to take a step back and say that I think that in talking with some of my contacts in intelligence agencies is that, to them, the Iranian deal was a bad deal for a lot of them. And here's why. We got out of what we wanted, which was a non-nuclear Iran, right? That was our main thing. That was our main stickler. But the one thing that it didn't address was the proxies that Iran has and that they work through. That was kind of off the table. They weren't going to negotiate that at all. And so there's a lot of people that felt, hey, Iran was never going to get a nuclear bomb anyways because Israel was not going to allow that. So that it was easy for them to give that up. So the Iranians said, hey, you know what, let's give that up. Let's free up all this money. We're going to take that money. Soleimani's going to be in charge of a lot of it. Because he's kind of the one who divvies it up to all the proxies. So we're going to, that's fine. We won't do a nuclear bomb. We'll prop up our proxies. Soleimani's going to be responsible for those funds. So a lot of people felt it was a bad deal. That's where a lot of people feel it was a bad deal. Mm-hmm. But our main objective is not to have a nuclear Iran. So, right. So we were able to do that. The Iranians stuck to the deal. So they, and there wasn't a lot of, one of the things I asked is like, hey, well, how was Iran towards Americans while we were living up to the deal? And then they were fine. They worked with us to help defeat ISIS. My belief is that the more that we open them up to the world economy, the more that they're going to want to play by the rules. It's going to be in their interest as we open up more markets to them. Mm-hmm. So, I do feel that part of what emboldened Soleimani and the Iranians to start, doing certain things like going after tankers in Saudi Arabia and, oil fields and tankers and doing certain things is because we backed out of the deal. I feel like we should have just stayed in the deal, worked with Iran because one of the things that Iran, they don't like ISIS. Right, their arch enemy is ISIS. And they also blame a lot of because there's a big Sunni Shiite, right? Mm-hmm. And they're Sunnis and the Saudis are Shiite, and so and ISIS is Shiite. So they're always going to battle with ISIS. They don't want that, and they kind of blame Saudi Arabia for ISIS. So. I think we should continue. My wish was that we would have just stayed in the nuclear deal, have a small force. It seems to me that the best way to approach this is not necessarily leaving 100% Iraq, because there is a consensus that ISIS will come back and reemerge, and I was talking to some of them, and yes, that even though Parliament said they want us to leave, they say that in public, but in private, they say they want us to stay. Because they know they can't defeat, if ISIS pops up again, they can't defeat them by themselves, and they can't defeat just with the help of the Iranians. They need us there. And so in private, they're saying stay. In public, they're saying go. So, they're talking out of two mouths. And like I said, these are, credible people. And so I think that I wish Trump would have just stayed in the Iran deal. We could have worked with them. We could have had a small force there to prevent ISIS from popping up, and then eventually we can transition out of there. So
yeah, that was kind of my take as well, because I always thought that the deal, even if it was flawed, was better than no deal.
Yeah.
Right. And I think it still gave us some access to do inspections, whether or not you trusted that was a separate issue, but it kept the dialogue going, and there was an opportunity to cooperate at some level. Right. But then once you tear up the deal, then, we come to, the fists come out. But, it's tricky, man. I mean, you go back in history, and it's not just the hostage crisis. I remember it was like in the late 80s. Didn't we shoot down one of their passenger airliners?
Right. So, we've had my whole thing on the Middle East, I would love for us to just get out. I mean, that should be the whole, that should be everything. Yeah. How can we just eventually get, I don't care about having influence on oil. I don't care about having influence on other countries per se. I do want to make sure we don't have another 9/11. Yeah. But at the same time, our end goal should be to eventually get out of the region in a way that makes sense. And not stay there. I mean, our goal should say, hey, look, our goal is to leave. We just want to make sure everything's good so that there's not another 9/11 on us, and that should be the end game.
Yeah, well, we're in agreement there. But there's a lot of people that want us to have a permanent presence there. Yeah, kind of like what we have in Korea. Yeah,
Germany and Japan. And, yeah. I was talking to. One of them, I said, because we have a lot of different models to look at. We have the Germany model, the Japan model, where we stayed and, had a big presence, and we spent, billions of dollars on that. Do we really want to go that route? Do we really want to leave and let ISIS come back and then potentially have another 9/11? Or do we just want a small force? They were saying anywhere from like 5,000 to 7,000 people, just to show support and to be as a deterrent. So, and then eventually, leave in a few years or something until the Iraqis can basically take care of themselves.
Right. Well, that should be the goal.
Right.
And imagine having them all as trading partners and win-wins.
That's
right.
That's right.
That would be the ideal world. But we're talking a little bit about President Trump. Share with me your thoughts on this whole impeachment thing.
Yeah. So, like I said, I'm not a Trump. There's a lot of things I don't like about Trump. But the bar to impeach a president is super high, and it's there for a reason. It's so that even though you don't like him personally or you don't agree with him, you just can't remove him from office, right? He has to be an imminent threat or doing something to this country, and you have to be able to prove it, right? That's the big thing. You have to be able. You can't just say, "I think he's doing this." You have to have hard facts. And here's the thing. I think the evidence is there to say, look, he did obviously withhold funding to the Ukraine, but he is in his right to do that. So that's not he can do that. He can withhold funding, and here's the thing: he eventually gave it to them. So where it's tricky is that we're trying to say that he held funding to investigate the Bidens, right? To help his reelection, right? And you could say, hey, yes, he was withholding funding to discuss corruption with Hunter Biden, but there is nothing on record that says that the motive behind it was to help him in his election. So, and that's what we need. We need to have something that said that either a recording or a conversation or somebody that's going to come forward and said, hey, he actually said he's going to withhold funding unless they investigate Hunter Biden so that he has a better chance of winning the election against Joe Biden, who he's probably going to have to compete against. So if you don't have that specific, then they're not going to, the Republican senators are not going to go against him. They're not going to vote to remove him from office.
But when you bring up Hunter Biden, immediately the word Biden pops up. It should be, it's unsaid that it's going to have this influence on the election.
Sure. So, and And here's my thing. He probably, my honest opinion is he was probably doing that to help him, to help his election. I do think that, but I can't prove it. And that's the thing. If I can't prove it, then that's it.
Well, at least there's an opportunity for voters to make a choice here.
Right.
In like, what, 10 months or so?
Yes, that's right. And so that's where the voter would come and say, hey, I don't need proof. I can just impeach him through my vote, in essence. Yeah. And so I do think it was an issue that it should have been brought up. I think the press should have said, hey, why are you asking about Hunter Biden and why are you withholding? Because that's the big deal. If he would have just said, hey, yeah, let the money go, but I want to know about Hunter Biden and the corruption going on, that would have been a totally different thing. But because he decided to do it in conjunction, then we have all these the reasons to think that that's what he was doing it for. But
he's going to be acquitted, right?
Right. Yeah. And it's going to look bad for the Democrats because they're going to say you did all this and he's still here.
Yeah. I'm exonerated.
Right. And you're only helping him. To be honest.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So, I'm not a big fan of President Trump. But one area that I have a strong disagreement with him, where I've spoken out in this podcast numerous times, is on the trade war.
Right.
And the tariffs and all of that. I mean, what's your perspective on that?
So, I think that the one thing I don't agree with is how he kind of recklessly goes about it. I mean, if he's going to have a trade war or any kind of policy, then it shouldn't be reckless, especially when you're the world power and you have a lot of you influence the world economy. We should be predictable, right? Because how we approach things affects the world. So that would be my first thing. He's just way too unpredictable in these types of things. Now,
that's what people like about him.
That's right. And some people would say that's great. I don't think, especially being the world power, I don't think that's good.
Right.
Now, should we be addressing issues with China? And other countries too. Yeah, I do. One of the things I don't like about some of these trade agreements is it takes away from American sovereignty. So whereas I don't, where international trade has benefited the United States tremendously is with the corporations. So the corporations and our GDP has gone up tremendously, but those benefits didn't necessarily trickle down to the American worker. And we should have been more, we should have saw that coming. And so we should have took two options. Okay, if we know it's going to help the American corporations a lot, then and it's going to be detrimental to the American worker in certain areas of the country specifically, then we should take steps to take some of that wealth and to help these people if it's going to be detrimental to them, right? So because we didn't do anything about it, I'm a believer in unions. I think that unions are good for the American worker. We made unions weaker. We did all kinds of things to not help the American worker. And so so now we're at a crossroads. So we either have to say, hey, look, we're going to help the American worker with things like healthcare and, making college more affordable and those types of things. Or we can be protectionists, right? And just say, hey, we're just going to do everything American made, and which I don't think is necessarily the route to go either. I think we need to trade with countries that have similar standards to us, both environmental and how they treat their workers, because it's unfair because basically what you're doing is we're not going to be able to compete.
Right.
Right. So, I do believe in trade, but it's got to be fair. And, and we definitely need with China, they're definitely stealing our intellectual property.
Yeah.
They're a rising power, and other countries are looking to them for influence, which is fine. And they're looking at their model, which their business model is different from ours. We just have to accept that they're not going to be like us. They're fine with their government being involved in their businesses and their personal lives, and we're not going to be that way.
Right.
That's not who we are, and we should just focus more on being the best versions of Americans we can be, and I think that's going to win the trade war long term. I think that, but to kind of go back to your questions in terms of tariffs and things like that. I think it needs to be less. If we are going to put I don't think tariffs are necessarily the right way to go. But if we are going to do it, I think it should be less reckless, and more thoughtful. And if we already know that China is going to tariff on this, let's just say soybeans, for example.
Right.
If we already know they're going to do that, we should already have things in place to help our soybean farmers, and we should be more strategic. And I don't think that Trump's really doing that. That's my problem.
Well, you think there would hopefully be other ways to manage the system, because when we apply tariffs here, we're only penalizing Americans.
Yeah, right.
Right. And then when you create the trade war, it damages the soybean exporter. Right. Right. Because then they don't have a market, and then suddenly China's now buying from Russia, and now we have no customers.
That's right.
I'm a big believer of free trade, and it would be nice if we can get to the point where we can sit across the table and say, how can we create a win-win?
Right. Yeah. I think if we're going to definitely have free trade like that, then we need to, because like I said, the corporations are the ones who benefit the most. Yeah. And they've consistently done that. The very wealthy have, the owners of these corporations have benefited the most. We need to take that wealth that we get from international trade, and we need to help the American worker and the American people.
And I think we could also coach the American worker on ways to transition into the new economy, right? Because it's like that book, Who Moved My Cheese, right? So suddenly the world has shifted. How do you adapt to that? And that's hard for people.
It is. For me, I can transition pretty easily. That's just kind of my personality. But like people like my parents, my dad worked for the post office. My dad went to Vietnam, came back, got a job at the post office, stayed there for almost 40 years, Yeah. And, that's just that generation. And my mom was a nurse. She worked for the county for a long time, then worked for Kaiser. And that was pretty much it, Yeah. And so we need to help people and help them transition, and, I'm all for that kind of stuff.
Well, that goes back to what you talked about with education and trade, teaching trades, and there's a lot that we need to do.
Right.
Yeah. We could probably go for hours on that one. I want to talk about just a couple more things.
Sure.
Let's talk about just fiscal issues, tax, deficits, national debt. What's your perspective there?
So I do think we need to start reining in the debt. The thing in terms of the and I do think there's a wealth gap, a huge wealth gap. And, we tend to have a lot of problems when you look in our history. When we have these huge wealth gaps, there tends to be a lot of instability, political instability, and causes a lot of problems. We need to shorten that wealth gap. And so so the question then becomes, how do we tax the very wealthy? The problem is, like, when you come up with these, let's create this income tax that taxes them more. Well, they're not necessarily getting their money from income, right? It's a lot of capital gains. It's a lot of others. So if we're going to go after, that's why I don't, an increase in income tax to me isn't going to have a huge benefit. I would be more interested in maybe increasing capital gains. I'm also a big believer in maybe looking into more of a land value tax rather than a property tax. And a lot of people don't talk about that.
Yeah, explain that.
So right now we have a property tax system where, I'll just give it like an example. Let's just say the land you live on is worth $200,000 and the house on top of it is worth $300,000. So we pay property tax on the total amount, which is $500,000, right? And what happens is if that homeowner decides to increase the value of their home, let's say that, they put a new roof, they decide to improve the property, right? And it goes to $600,000. Well, in our current property tax system, you're actually going to get penalized for doing that. You're going to pay a higher tax for doing that, right?
That's right.
So what if you move towards more of a land value tax, where we're just going to tax not the value of the property, but just the value of the land? What that does is it incentivizes you to increase, or it incentivizes you to, make your property better. However you want. You're not going to be penalized for doing that. And it actually is going to disincentivize, because whose property value is going to go up more, or whose taxes are going to go up more, are the people who just sit on empty land. So I'll give you an example. So in that type of system, the person who just sits on just land, they're going to see their property taxes actually go up. So what it does is it puts them in a situation to they either have to build more homes,
right,
build a business, or grow something on. They're going to have to do something with that property, and by doing, you're going to create housing, you're going to create jobs, you're going to create all these different things. So by creating more of a land value tax, I think we're going to have a lot more builders and a lot more owners of land. Even driving up here, I see a lot of land, and there's people who, and yet we're in a housing crisis because we don't have enough homes. So how do we motivate people to build on these properties? Well, let's do a land value tax. Let's penalize it. Let's basically, in essence, penalize them for just sitting on dead land. Let's force them to build something. And so it would actually be really good for like apartment builders because we're not necessarily taxing them on how many apartments they have. We're just taxing them on the amount of land they have. You'll see better use of that land. So you won't have, for example, just a shopping mall with a bunch of parking spots. They're gonna use it to the best of its advantage. So you might see condos on top of that shopping place. And so I think a land value tax is a better something that's easy to transition to. That's going to promote more buildings.
So the devil's advocate to that are the environmentalists that don't want you to touch the land. Save the land.
So and you're talking to somebody who is an environmental. I love the environment. I'm all about that.
Well, you're a solar guy. You're green technology.
Are there places that we may not want? National parks and those types of things. Yeah, of course. If there's going to be certain pollution in our waterways and things, yes, of course. But really, what we're talking about is, hey, here's buildable land. We need to build on it. We need to, and one of the reasons this is never really brought up anywhere. When I talk to people about, hey, have you heard of a land value tax as opposed to property tax system? They're like, I've never heard about it. Yeah. One of the reasons is that the people who traditionally can sit on a lot of land are very wealthy people.
That's right.
Right. And so those, once again, the very wealthy do not want their politicians to talk about a land value tax, because that would increase their property, the tax on their land. So I think it's a conversation that I like to start. I almost feel like when Andrew Yang talks about basic income, I'm like the land value tax guy. so I think that's one way that we can create more tax revenue. I think that when it comes to the corporations, with Trump's new tax plan, for example, to me, the biggest issue wasn't the tax rates. I would actually like to see it more on a scale basis. So like, for example, as a C Corp, you're paying, I want to say it was 21%. It's like a flat. Right. Well, I would like to see it for maybe a small corporation, maybe under $1 million, the small business owner, let's make it 10%. And then, that way we're helping that person more. And then, as it goes up for those bigger companies, they pay a bigger share. But one of the problems is we still have the loopholes that allow companies to hide money offshore, whether it's in the Bahamas and things like that. And we didn't attack the loopholes that are there. And so I think we need to make sure that, hey, and these are simple fixes. I mean, we could easily say to banks that are in the Bahamas or are in Switzerland and all these other countries, say, hey, look, if you don't agree or abide by our banking standards and our transparency laws, then we're not going to do banking with you. And so that's going to force them to go, okay, we're going to have to disclose who's hiding all this money where. Right. And so, we need to do that. It's the loopholes, in my opinion, that are really preventing us from getting all this tax revenue. Right. Yeah. So.
Well, you said you want to start to rein in the debt. Yes. So what about on the other side of the ledger? Are spending issues? How would you address some of that?
So I think one of the things. So. I think we need to look at things like, for example, I think we can rein in spending on the military, right? I think we can rein in spending almost everywhere across the board and say, hey, look, for example, higher education. Well, if we're talking about let's make college a 3-year rather than a 4-year,
right?
That's a simple fix to say, hey, look, we're going to slash the budget because you don't need that much anymore.
Okay, this is outside the box thinking.
Right. So or if we're going to start ending, things like the drug war and different things, and then we're not going to need so much money for that. We're not. So we need to look for ways to say that we're going to cut everywhere. In my opinion, I think we have enough room and enough of a budget where we can pretty much cut everywhere and we'd be fine. And then just maybe leave the budget at, for example, the budget, I think what we bring in is about a little bit over $3.5 trillion in tax revenue every year from the federal government stand. Let's just put our budget at that and leave it at that and then anything, if we bring in more tax revenue the following year, let's do it towards the debt and paying off the debt. And reining that in, because eventually the problem with too much debt is inflation. That's the long term. That's the real big issue is inflation, and so we need to start addressing the national debt before it gets too crazy. So, but I'm a big believer we can pretty much cut everywhere. I think we can hold the budget down, and we need to look for ways to start cost savings. So. And if we are going to invest, let's look at ways, if we are going to put money somewhere, how is that going to come back to us, either in savings or as an investment? That's how we have to start looking at it. Like, we're going to give you $100 million. How are we going to make that back somewhere else?
Yeah, because a lot of times when they say we're going to invest in the economy, it's just a giveaway.
That's right.
It's a subsidy and a gift rather than what's our return on the investment.
Right.
Yeah, right on.
Right.
I like that approach of how do we change policy and our perspective around education, the drug war, to then no longer have a need to spend all that.
That's right.
It's an interesting approach.
Yeah.
You were talking earlier about land value tax and encouraging vacant lots to develop. That gets us into this whole housing crisis, the affordability of housing. How would you solve that if you had a magic wand?
Right. So I think the land value tax would probably be my first thing. And then I think we need to talk, wages is a big issue. So for example, if I'm paying, let's say I'm paying $2,000 on that's my rent, for example, and I make $3,000. Well, if I can take my wages from $3,000 to $6,000, then all of a sudden it's not that unaffordable, right? So it's hard to control what the rent's going to be, but the one thing we can do is we can help increase wages, right?
Okay.
And so if we're going to look at how to increase wages, then we have to look at how do we spur the economy more. And I do think, and I kind of harp on this a lot, but I do think the green economies are way out of it. I think because it's just going to be a rush of jobs. Yeah. And good paying jobs. I mean, you're electricians, plumbers, and welders, all these different people who have to be involved. And so anything to help the economy, more work, more building. I think, a big problem is we don't have enough homes.
Right.
So I think the land value tax helps with that. More competition is going to bring down the price of homes. So we have to look at it from two perspectives. How do we bring it down? And then how do we bring our wages up? Right. So, anything to help job growth is going to bring our wages up. And then anything that's going to bring more homes is going to bring the price down. And it's going to make it more affordable. So,
what about the homeless?
So here's what I think there's there's almost like different types of homeless people. And I'll kind of elaborate on that. So I think you have those people that we can all kind of understand. Maybe they don't have family, they fell on hard times, and they want to work. They're willing to work or they're willing to do something. They just need short-term assistance, right? And there's actually a lot of services for those people. But what we have a problem with chronic homelessness, and unfortunately, I think we're kind of somewhat helping these people stay chronic homeless sometimes because we're basically, because these are people who don't necessarily want to get off drugs. They may say, but their actions are not, right? They're not trying to get off drugs, right? If they can kind of stay, we can help them maintain their drug habit, then they're going to stay that way, right? For a lot of times. And my thing, I believe we should try to continue to help those people who want to help themselves, those people who almost homeless. We don't want them to make the crossover into the chronic homeless, but continue to help as much there. But those people who are already chronic homeless, drug addicts, I think, honestly, what I think we need to do is, and if you talk to a homeless person who's a drug addict, they'll say that really the only time they will change is when they hit rock bottom. And so what we should do is say, hey, how quick can we, in essence, help you hit rock bottom? that is my, and because I think some of these programs get in the way of helping them hit rock bottom.
Yeah, you're right.
And so if we were going to look at it from a cost-effective way, because it's crazy that we allow people to set up a tent on a sidewalk, 30, 50 tents, sit there, do their drugs, do whatever, and I can't walk down the street. That's crazy. We should not allow that.
Right.
But at the same time, do they need a place to sleep? Yes. Okay. Well, hey, there's a lot of land, 20 minutes east of San Diego, right? We'll let them camp out there. We can set up an area where it's there's services out there, maybe in a I forgot what you call those things, but like kind of like a double wide type of situation where
like a mobile home park,
right, and
RV,
right, and allow them to go out there or utilize that land where they can stay out there, and because I don't think that we should have areas where they should be able to sleep on the streets. I think we should move them somewhere where they can get help. Doesn't have to be super expensive. Right. And let them either get off the drugs, don't allow drugs in that area, however you want to do it, and then offer them assistance. But the problem is that I think that we're aiding and abetting them to be chronic drug users, and they're just not wanting to come off of it. And so my thing is, let's find a cheap place to where we can move them out over there. We'll deal with them over there and provide services for them there. If we can involve family to help them, we'll do that. But you can't be sleeping on the streets and just pitching a tent. We have to draw a line where we say that's not accepted, where that's not acceptable, and we have somewhere else where you can go and sleep.
It's a tricky situation because I think people, like you say, I'm an American, but I'm a human first. You said that earlier. People as humans, they want to help them.
Right.
They don't want to see people suffer, but at the same time, they want people to help themselves.
That's right. And here, it's funny because when I tell people about that, at first they're like, "What do you mean you want to have them go camp out somewhere out there?" I said, "What's the difference between having them camp here and having them camp there?" The difference is I can now walk down the street. These businesses can now operate and run and how they normally can. And and I'm not saying that person can't camp and do their, but we need to be able to say there's somewhere else you can do that, and not here. Right. And if you want help, there's help, but we can't force you. Once you hit rock bottom and you're ready, we'll be here for you.
Sure.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
So, getting near the end here.
It's okay.
But I have a fun question.
Sure.
So you're out on the campaign trail.
Right.
So you're probably meeting all kinds of people and learning new things. I mean, share some stories of the situations you've encountered on the campaign trail.
You meet a lot of interesting people who also, I think part of my, obviously as an independent is I talk a lot about the problems of the two-party system. Yeah. And the more that I start to talk about it, the more people go, yeah, you know what, you're right. I've been kind of thinking the same thing. Yeah. And so and then you start to realize that people just have, they a lot of the same people want the exact same thing, and they're willing to not get perfect legislation that has 100% of what they want, but if it's 80% of what they want, they're okay. They want progress, and not necessarily perfection, but they want progress. And I've met a lot of interesting people, young people, older people. But I think just the consensus is people are starting to get fed up with the two-party system. Yeah. And they're excited that there's a new voice out. That's good. Yeah. And I like I said, I love the fact you're independent. Yeah. But one of the things that is going to be a challenge for you is that they have the whole party infrastructure that's, door hanging and, all the things that they do. So here's a funny, and it's kind of a story on everything is, yes. So even knowing how to get started as an independent, that's that is in itself is a challenge. You know,
Yeah.
You don't have anybody to go to. And so one of the funny things is that when I had to do my paperwork, you have to get signatures. You had to get at least 40 signatures from registered voters in your district, right?
Okay.
And they give you a sheet of 60. So just in case, because some of those people that you sign maybe live in your district, but they're registered somewhere else. You know, they never brought it over, or they live on the border of your district and they're just one street away, right?
Yeah.
Because they verify everything. And when they called me up to a week later to say about the paperwork, they're like, yeah, I had gotten 55 signatures, and they said you got exactly 40 legitimate, accurate signatures. If you would have had 39, you wouldn't have been on the ballot.
Whoa.
Right. So I exactly made it on the ballot perfectly. I got lucky. But yeah, it's just things like that you kind of, you learn on the process. The funding, pretty much my campaign is all self-funded.
Bravo.
Yeah. And so I'll be doing kicking off some fundraising, but these are small fundraisers, people that are going to give $20, $30 or something,
Yeah.
But it's pretty much self-funded, and, learning how to do that, how much this is. And, it is a challenge, but at the same time, I'm not beholden to anything. Mm-hmm. I have the freedom to share my own ideas, take new ideas, and learn from other people. And, and that's, I don't have all the answers, but if I can get in front of people who do or have good answers, and I'm more than happy to use them.
So to me, that's what's so great about your campaign, is that you're approachable, you're willing to look outside the box. Mm-hmm. You're not stuck in that same party dogma where they always say the same things over and over again.
Yeah.
Hey, have you heard about instant runoff voting?
Instant runoff voting, no.
So it's where you can stack rank the candidates.
Rank, ranked choice voting, yes.
I mean, that would be awesome. Especially for you.
Yeah, there's actually at USD, it's in my calendar, which I don't have right now, but they're actually there's what's called the Independent Voter Project. It's actually based out of San Diego, and they're having an event. It's on Facebook either this week or next week, and they're talking about ranked choice voting, which I think would be great.
Yeah.
And it's in one of the, Maine is one of the states that also inputted it or implemented it, I should say. And they actually have an independent senator. There's only like two. There's the one from Michigan, and then there's there's this gentleman. And so, I think ranked choice voting is the way to go. It's a way for us to have independent voices. It's for us to have a government that represents the people.
Because often people will vote for the lesser of evil, right? They say, I want to keep the really evil guy out.
That's right.
So I'm going to vote for this less evil.
Yeah.
When people might say, there's an independent candidate I really like.
Right.
But they might be saying, well, does he have a chance?
Right.
And it eliminates all this wasted vote fallacy.
That's right.
I think it would be a huge transformative, healthy process to our system.
Yeah, absolutely. And, it's funny because the lesser of two evils is still evil.
Yes.
And people don't, and one of the things that the Republicans and Democrats have really done really good is they've made people feel like they're wasting their vote. And if they go independent, and it was funny, Jesse Ventura, when, because he was an independent, and he said, no, you're wasting your vote if you vote for them.
Yes. Yes.
And really, they're the spoiler votes,
Yeah.
So people need to kind of, take a step back and look at things differently, and and realize that you're not wasting your vote. Who you want to vote for is who you want to vote for. So I think ranked choice voting will help with that, absolutely. But even without that, I think people need to kind of wake up and see that there's alternatives, and and really there's some good Democrats and good Republicans. I'm not saying they're all bad, but the system is what's not working for us.
Yeah. It's dysfunctional.
It is.
But it's funny because a lot of people will vote for that party, that candidate, because they philosophically believe in that, but then they end up getting the opposite. The policies that actually get implemented are counter.
Right.
So it's nuts.
Yeah.
So you're going to be on the ballot. Is it going to be in March or November?
March 3rd.
Okay.
So March 3rd is our primary. So, everybody can vote in California in the March 3rd primary. So even if you're Republican, you can vote for whoever you want, or Democrat, however. The presidential candidacy is a little different. So if you're an independent voter, actually today's the deadline. There's a specific kind of ballot you have to request to vote for, because the Democratic Party and some other parties are allowing for independents to vote in their election in November. But for the primary, March 3rd, the top two candidates will move on to the general election in November, and hopefully I'm one of those two.
I think so. I'm looking forward to this. You got a lot to offer.
I appreciate it.
Yeah. So how can people contact you?
So they can go on my website. It's Fernando Garcia for Congress.com. They can also go on Facebook and for Fernando Garcia for Congress. And I'm on Twitter. I'm not very active on Twitter, but I'm on Twitter at FG for Congress. And they can check me out that way.
Right on.
Yeah.
Okay, so the 53rd district is right there, kind of in the center of San Diego.
Yep.
And it goes down a little bit like Florida.
Yes.
Down to the eastern parts of Chula Vista.
Yep.
But it's like La Mesa in
La
your
Mesa,
district?
Spring Valley, most of El Cajon, Olive College area, Hillcrest, North Park, Mission Valley, South Park, Golden Hills, Old Town. And then Bonita. Yeah. So all of that is in my district.
That's a good group.
Yeah.
That'd be a great group to represent in Congress.
Yes. So, a lot of students obviously in the San Diego State area.
Yeah.
But, a lot of military as well. People from all walks of life, and and what's crazy about there are actually people running in my district who don't even live in the district.
Yeah.
Which is kind of a crazy thing that I learned running for Congress is you don't actually have to live in your district to run in your district.
Well, that's what's going on in Duncan Hunter's district, right?
Right.
It's like Carl DeMaio lives up here in Rancho Bernardo,
right?
And then with the other guy, who's the auto guy? Isa. He lives in Vista, doesn't he?
Right.
And he's running in East County.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
That's great. Yep.
So there's 15 of you. So like a couple of them don't even live in your district.
Yeah, actually it's funny because one of the leaders, her name's Georgette Gomez.
Yeah.
She's a city council member, and she's actually my fiance's parents' next door neighbor.
Oh, wow.
Right.
Okay.
So I actually see them, but they're not in my district. They can't even vote for me. So, but yet she doesn't live in the district and is running in my district. So,
and she's the Democratic endorsed candidate.
That's right. And she doesn't live in the district.
Oh, unbelievable.
Right.
So, who's the guy that he's also running in the 50th, but he lives in the district, and it's he's from Santee. I can't remember his name, but he was trolling both DeMaio and Isa.
Yeah.
Basically making fun of them that they didn't live in the district,
right.
And it was great.
Yeah.
And it got him a little bit of attention.
Yeah.
God, why is his name escaping me? He was like a city council guy in Santee, and then he was in the assembly, and. But yeah, that's just wrong.
Right.
That you have to live in the area of the people you represent.
Absolutely.
Imagine if our senator from California lived in Texas.
Right. Exactly. So it just and those are things I did not know until I started to run, which is crazy. I just assumed you had to.
And you live in Golden Hills.
I live in Golden Hills. I live right in my district.
So you're too legit to quit.
That's right. So I know what's going on in my district. I see the people in my district all the time. So they're a great group of people. So
yeah, right on.
Yeah.
So what's the next thing on your schedule?
So my next big one, we do a lot of little things, go to different meetings and stuff. But the next big one is Sunday, January 25th. I believe there's a big debate in Chula Vista at the Chula Vista Library. It's a Saturday evening. Not all the candidates were invited, but I don't know why all of them are not attending. At least, it just doesn't make any sense. So there's about 9 of them that will be there, and so I will be there, and I believe that predominantly everybody else is Democrat that's being there. I didn't see any of the Republicans on it. And I don't know why, but that's going to be an opportunity for me to say what I have say.
So are you working and campaigning?
Yes,
you probably have very little time.
Exactly. So it's very, I utilize social media a lot. So I do that a lot. And but yeah, it's very busy, and I got my business that I'm running and got my campaign I'm running. I got a few volunteers. My fiance has been amazing. She helps me tremendously. She's kind of my promotional chair, I guess you could say. And
nice.
But yeah, just a lot of people pitching in, pro bono, whether it's doing my website or taking photos, and that's it.
Well, Fernando Garcia, man.
Yes.
Thanks for joining me.
Well, hey, thank you for having me.
Yeah.
I appreciate it so much.
Good luck to you on the campaign trail. I think you got a lot to offer.
Yeah, thank you.
And I love that you're an independent.
Yes.
All right.
Always.
All right. Congrats. Good luck to you.
Thank you very much.